There they are, all the faces. Where are the rest? Oh, there we go. We still have people jumping in.
Just thousands.
Thousands. Hey, Mara. She's like, can you hear us? Can you hear us? She looks frozen. Is that me?
It might be you because I see everybody else moving.
Okay. Well, I see everybody else moving.
Oh.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Jeannie. All right, you guys. Well, it's 11:04. We're going to continue to let people in. I know a couple other people texted me and said they're going to be jumping in late as they come off coaching calls. So welcome, you guys, to our monthly Path to a Million Mastermind. If you are on this call, these are our top producers that are invited to a special call between the Experience Brokerage Network and the Ben Kinney Co. Network. So thank you guys for joining us. We have a special guest speaker today. And before we get into it, this is supposed to be a mastermind and it's supposed to be interactive. So masterminds always work best when we are actually dealing with real life people, because this isn't a recorded event that you are just listening to. So if you are on this call and dressed appropriately, please turn your camera on out of respect for all of the top producers that put their time aside today to join an actual mastermind. All right, with that being said, look at all those people turning their cameras on or disappearing because they're terrified, Brian. Now, you guys, many of you guys know Brian Gubernick. For those of you who don't, I could go on and on about him, but I'm going to let the man, the myth, the legend do it himself. So
let him go on and on about himself. I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to let you do that.
That's the play.
Brian, why don't you do a quick introduction to who you are, what you do, and what you're going to be kind of presenting or sharing today?
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody, for hanging out with me for at least the next, call it 40, 45, 50 minutes. I'm really excited to be here. As some of you may know, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my background, but specifically Ben and Chris and your entire leadership team are friends of mine. Not just Keller Williams friends of mine, but I would say true friends. And so it's an honor to be here and hang out with you guys for a bit. So real quick on me, frankly, I guess what I like to say is what makes me credible to speak around this topic today. I have been with KW since February of 2007, which is also when I started selling. And if you're doing the math, I'm here in Phoenix, I'm in Scottsdale. So if you want to start a real estate career, what you do is you pick Phoenix 2007. You're like, okay, where's the worst place to be? That's what happened with me. And I started my real estate career. I was very heavy short sale and foreclosure. Some of you on this call probably have no idea what that even means, but that's where the market was at the time. I built a pretty big team, started expanding that team to a handful of different cities and states. As I like to tell my buddy Ben, I always say, Ben, when did you first open your expansion location? And whatever date he gives me, I make sure to give him 1 month before as to when I started. So built a team, got into the market center ownership side of things, got into the title business and the coaching and training space, and really just kind of built a bigger real estate business with multiple levels or lanes to it. About 2 years ago, I joined a friend of ours, Tim Heil, who is the CEO of Homeward. I joined Tim Heil. He tricked me into coming alongside him at Homeward, and today I'm the chief real estate officer of the company. My plan was to scale back all those other things I mentioned. That plan failed. So I probably work a little bit more than I'd like to work these days, but I love it. We are, and I don't think it's a surprise to any of you guys. I really think we're in the greatest industry in the land. And I say that for a multitude of reasons, aside from the fact that it's always exciting. There's always something going. There's always opportunity. I look at it as there are very few places or very few businesses on this planet where you can enter the game completely inexperienced and make the exact same amount, if not more money, than the most experienced guy or girl in your town. right? Like recognize, like that's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. You go to real estate school, depending on the state in which you're in, let's call it Arizona, you've got 9 days of class, which is like longer than most places, but you've got 9 days of class. You go and pass a state and a national exam, and you literally come out the next day and you go take a listing at 3% or 6%, but you're going to make 3%. Same thing that Brian Gubernick has done, and he's closed 4,000, 5,000 more properties than you. That's amazing to me. That's awesome. It really is. There's not a lot of other industries like that. And that's a big draw, right? I think the blessing and the curse of our industry, the blessing is, and I'm talking to top producers, so you guys get this at a high level. The blessing is that the competition's relatively poor. I mean, call it what it is. A lot of us, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but a lot of us landed in real estate after 1, 2, or 7 other careers before we got here. The competition is relatively poor. So our ability to succeed and succeed at a massive level is really there for the taking. Now, the curse of that is that our competition is relatively poor. So unfortunately, we as realtors do not always have the best name out there. Well, I'm on a mission to make sure we change that. I think a lot of you guys are as well, which is why today's topic is run your business like a business, why it's so near and dear to me. And I'm going to talk around a number of action items that I think some of you already have implemented in your world and are probably doing at an extraordinary level. And then I'm going to talk about some things that maybe you're thinking about but haven't done anything about. And then I'll likely mention something that's totally not on your radar but needs to be. Now, I'm going to be sharing this with you from the perspective of Brian, the realtor, the real estate team owner that has had an awful lot of failures and mistakes over the years. A lot of what I'm going to share today are based on my learnings. Like I wasn't doing these things, and then I learned from some of our common mentors, Gary Keller, of course, being one, how to change, how to revise, what I needed to tweak. So I'm going to talk around a lot of that. I'm also going to be talking as a guy that has coached and trained thousands of agents. Even still today, I run a mastermind with Ben Kinney on a quarterly basis for the highest of high producers. And it's still the basics. It's still conversation just like this. That's my perspective. All that being said, Leslie had mentioned, this is a mastermind. I want you to feel as though you can interject, jump in, challenge. I don't care. Whatever you want to do, you do it. End game, like my end game here, my objective, it's going to sound cliche, but I want to make sure you get one thing out of today. I have some really, really high dollar per hours on this call. I'm very aware of that. I'm going to pause there real quick because that is one thing that's not in this presentation, but I want to emphasize it right now. Everybody here today, or everyone that watches this recording later, you should be very, very aware of your dollar per hour. You need to be extraordinarily clear around your dollar per hour. I think everybody in the business world needs to be clear on their dollar per hour, right? So if you've never figured out what am I worth per hour, I'm going to encourage you to make that your action item today. It's real simple. How much am I working and how much commission am I making? Let's do the math. Right. And I say that because as we talk around things like time management or choosing this or going that direction or pivoting here or having this conversation, I think it's incredibly important for you to understand, well, what am I giving up in exchange? See, today, you're spending an hour, let's say, on this call. For some of you, that means you're not making that $100 or $200 or $300 or $600 an hour that many of you are making. Right. So my point is, and it's not offensive to me, like if you looked at this and said, you know what, it's worth my $300 that I'm going to go make elsewhere for this next hour. That's awesome. And if you said the opposite, doesn't bother me, because to me, it's a function of awareness. Right. So I do go about my business world, literally every minute of my business world. And I'm a family man, my wife, 2 young daughters, and a lot of stuff going on at home. I am so particular about my time. And the way I manage that time oftentimes is, what am I giving up? And when I monetize it, when I assign a number to it, it really helps me understand. So what's your dollar per hour, right? So that's not in the presentation, but I think it drives a lot. So we're going to talk about running a business like a business. I want you to ask yourself these questions. Now, a lot of words on this screen. And by the way, I will send out, I have no problem sending out this slide deck. So don't feel like you got to screenshot it. Go ahead if you want to. But I will get this out. A lot of words here, and I kind of apologize, but they're important, which is why it's so detailed. I want you to think around these things, okay? Everybody, I don't care about your role. I want you to be thinking about these things, okay? Even jot down some answers if you'd like. In your business world right now, what are you currently measuring? What are you currently measuring right now? I don't mean measuring in your head, right? I don't mean occasionally glancing at and calculating on, a 6-month basis. I mean, what are you measuring on a regular basis? Quantity of closings, escrows. These are great. There's no right or wrong answer here. I just want to know what you're tracking. Number 2, of these things you're tracking, what do you think are the best indicators of effort? Which of these metrics are the best indicators of effort? What metrics would we say are product goals, like these lag results, and what are process goals? More activity or lead indicator based. So an example, effort based, if you're tracking the number of doors you knocked today, that is pure effort. There's no skill to physically walk and bang on someone's door. There is no skill to making contacts. There's will to making contracts. There is will to banging on doors, but skill is not required. That is pure effort. I'll explain why I'm so focused on effort here in a moment. So what are you measuring, and what are you measuring that defines effort? If you're judging by effort, be honest with yourself right now. How are you personally performing at this very moment? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being effort-wise, I am performing at my highest level possible, 1 being the opposite of that. And you can't use 7. You cannot use the number 7. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rank yourself? Don't use a 7. All right. If you try to use a 1 to 5, you're not allowed to use the number 4. Okay. There's no gaming this system, right? Always remove that 70 or 80% number out of there and watch what sort of responses you get from your people. Side note, a lot of you guys running teams, always remove 7 from the equation. You got to commit. I'm either an 8 or I'm a 6, right? So if you're judging by effort, how are you personally performing? If you've got a team and you did the same sort of thing with them, what kind of answers might you get? And ultimately, the focusing question here is, what kind of story is this telling? And how do I feel about this story? All right. Now, I haven't gotten into any technical aspects of running a team or a business just yet, but I'm going to pause after those first 3 questions. I believe that if you're honest and you think through these things and you assess, you probably just had a decent amount of, as we say in the Keller world, ahas, right? Like, so you should have had some light bulbs there. Like, I am putting in a lot of effort and it's not panning out, or I am putting in a lot of effort and it is panning out, or I'm not putting in any effort, but I'm still having success. These things, like, we're going to do a deeper analysis as to why that may be. But starting, this is your jump off point. Number 4, how often are you actually looking at these metrics? Now, I'm going to get ahead of myself. Why do I care about that? Because business people review metrics and make decisions based off of them. Realtors do the opposite. No disrespect, but that's fact. Business people review metrics and make educated, intelligent decisions. Realtors fly by the seat of their pants. Now, clearly this group's doing something right. I have to believe you're reviewing some numbers, otherwise you wouldn't be here today. Okay. Last question on here. Do you and or your agents know your priorities every single day? Do you truly know what must be done each and every day? And please, please, please don't give me the, I don't have the book in here right now. I have this one in here, of course. Don't give me the answers that come out of these books or the MREA book. The answer is always, well, of course I know my priority, Brian. I got to lead generate from 9 to 11. Okay, cool. I get it. I agree. And I don't want the boilerplate answer. I want to know, do you really know what you think you need to be doing? Are you very clear? Are your people very clear? And what you're going to see here in a moment, I'm going to ask the question, do you know whether you're winning or losing every single day? Let's come back to that, okay? So running a business versus running a practice. I want to quickly define this for you. This is Brian's definition. I'm not saying this is the right definition, but my perspective on this, when I say running a business like a business, the best way for me to explain, my position on this, it's going to sound silly, but bear with me. I have an absolute amazing set of in-laws. Like, I'm very, very fortunate, seriously. Like my father-in-law, like, I hang out with him. I go hunting or fishing with him. Like, I really love spending time with this guy. He's a unique fellow. My in-laws are Bulgarian, from Bulgaria. My wife's actually from Bulgaria and moved to the States after I ordered her online. No, I'm totally joking. I did not do that. But my in-laws and my wife they're from Bulgaria. And I share that because their mindset, how they operate, is a little bit different. My father-in-law and my wife, they're dentists. My father-in-law is a very successful dentist in Phoenix, and built his way, and moved to the US with $75 in his pocket, and built an amazing career. And I will talk with this man about anything. Like, he's that cool a dude. I will talk to him about whatever he'd like. But the one thing I truly hate talking to him about is business. And I say that it's challenging for me, because how he defines a business and how he operates is quite a bit different than me. And the reality is, he's not running what I would call a business. He's running a practice. And I don't mean that in a derogatory or negative sense. I just mean, like, his perspective is much different than mine. And what do I mean when I say he's running a practice? See, he goes back, as a matter of fact, they're there right now. They're in Stockholm today, but they go to Europe for 8 weeks every summer. My in-laws do, and have been doing that forever, because that's what the Euros do. Now, that's the whole nother set of challenges for me. I have a wife that thinks you're supposed to vacation like 4 months a year. I don't necessarily know if we can pull that one off, but it's beside the point. They're gone every summer. And when my father-in-law leaves that office, revenue ceases to exist. The whole thing shuts down, literally shuts down. Like, every employee he has, it's mandatory. They all take 2 months off during the summer. Mind you, they don't get paid during those 2 months. But he's like, listen, you work for me. It's a 10-month-a-year job. We shut down. And then, this is common practice in a lot of places in Europe. He runs it here in Phoenix. And again, it's an amazing deal. Good for him. Like he's had success. But when he starts talking business to me, a business is one that has systems and models and people such that when you want to go off for 8 weeks, it still continues not just to operate, but maybe even flourish. So today, when I say run a business like a business, there's nothing wrong, to be super clear. There is nothing wrong with running a practice, one that is heavily dependent on you as the individual, that does cease to operate when you go somewhere else. Nothing wrong with that if you're hitting every goal you've ever set and you're living the exact life you want to live. But if there's misalignment, if you're not hitting the goals, if you don't have the leverage, if you're not doing those things you want to do, well, then we got to have the conversation we're having today about getting this practice of yours to a place to more of a business-like place. Does that make sense? That I see some heads nodding. That kind of makes sense. And that's my analogy around it. Again, love the guy a ton, but it's just tough to have those sorts of conversations. So as we get into, what makes a business, I think at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is predictability. To me, that's just a key component of a business. How predictable, how stable do I know what's coming? How predictable is it? Right? So when you're looking at product goals, closings, these are the lag measures, and you're looking at process goals. Remember, process goals were all of those efforts. I believe the best indicator of success in a business is going to be in the effort applied to creating that business, as opposed to the skill level or customer service level or anything else that you're supposed to be doing as a real estate agent. Simply put, you could be no joke, the worst, least skilled agent that gets unfortunately out negotiated. You can have poor customer service. Well, I don't want anybody to have this, but I'm just saying, you have poor customer service. You can be doing lots of things wrong in your business, but if you are an effort or lead generation machine, you will still win in this game. Now, on the flip side, if you're providing the greatest customer service experience ever, if you're the best negotiator and you do such extraordinary work for your clients, but you have no effort, there's no success to be had. Yes, you may trip and fall into business and some referrals, but you will never get to where you want to go. You follow me? So what I'm saying is, yes, skill and customer service, all these things are really important for the best of the best. But the truth of the matter is the most predictable businesses are those that have effort and measure this effort and know exactly what the recipe needs to be in order to bake the cake. Okay, so what's your recipe is a lot of what I'm talking about. And the more stable that recipe, the more predictable the outcome with that cake. Follow me? The more consistent with that recipe, the more defined that recipe, the more frequently you visit that recipe, the better that cake is probably going to taste. And that brings us to this whole concept of skill and will. Now, most of you, you're all high performers. A lot of you probably have other agents alongside you. I want to talk briefly around this whole will versus skill concept. I've kind of already said this over and over again, but maybe this demonstrates it a little bit more. As you look at this matrix, you see will on the, what is that called? The y-axis, and skill on the x-axis. Low will, low skill. It says low performers here. To me, this is eject. Get out of relationship with these people. Low will, low skill. That's and if that's you, eject from yourself. Like, go take a step back and go study and learn and improve your game and do these things before you jump back in the game. High skill, low will. These are, it says potential detractors here. These are the individuals that we've all had maybe in our business worlds that perform, have success in their role, yet undermine everything we ever talk around. That don't honor what it is we stand for. These are the individuals that undermine the culture you try to create in your team. A great example on a real estate team, we've all had this or will have this in the future. If you're growing your people, you're going to have a group of people, and you're going to have this guy or gal who is your top producer or a top producer, and they're going to be doing, call it four deals a month, and you're going to love their production, and then they're going to miss meetings. They're not going to follow your lead generation process. They're not going to honor your SOI system, and you're going to have that conversation we've all had or will have in our business careers, which is, oh my gosh, this person doesn't do anything I ask of them, but they're producing, and I don't want to part with that. Anybody have that experience or know what I'm talking about? I don't want to, maybe you shouldn't nod your heads because maybe there's people around you that they're in your world right now that are this. I had one guy on my team not too long ago, highest producer, but I couldn't get him to do any of the work. And what I learned was keeping him as a potential detractor was actually short-sighted. If you keep someone who's a potential detractor, it's because you're thinking with your pocketbook and you're short-sighted, because in the long term, it always comes back to bite you in the ass. It always does. Now, what do you do with those individuals? You do everything you can to motivate. And ideally, if you can motivate and you get their will, their effort up, maybe they move into that high performer quadrant there that you see. These are high will, high skill. Obviously, we'd all love to have all these kind of people all the time. What do you got to do? You got to challenge them. You got to push them. You got to create new opportunity for them, right? People only will leave your world. For all of you, you all have talent in your world right now. People will leave your world when they perceive that opportunity ceases to exist. They will leave your world when they perceive that opportunity ceases to exist. So as a leader, as a business leader, as someone running a business like a business, your job, part of your job as the leader, is to be thinking about what is the next opportunity for my best performer. Because if you're not thinking about that, somebody else is, and that somebody else is probably outside of your company looking to take your talent. Fact. Let's call it what it is. Sounds harsh, but it's true. Right now, everybody on this call today, my guess is that you left your last relationship, your last business relationship, or your last business because you perceived opportunity or growth to cease to exist. Right? Like my last formal job was many years ago, but I left the accounting world when I was 22 because I was in public accounting, totally bad fit for me. But I was in that role, and I left because I was shown like this hierarchy, this ladder I had to climb, and I wasn't built for that. And in my mind, the opportunity was not what I needed it to be. So I left it. If they had come to me and positioned something out, not to say I was worthy of this, but if they had come to me and say, hey, we've created this new world or this new opportunity for you, or we've done this, I might still be there today. Right? Every one of us, like you may be in your last place you were, if there was something bigger or better, but there wasn't. So here you are today. Make sure you're thinking about this for your same people. Then lastly, high will, low skill. These are individuals like high will. I'm a firm believer that if you give me a guy or girl who's willing to do the work, then it is my job to do everything possible to skill them up. Give me a guy or girl who's willing to do the work. It is my job to skill them up. The dangerous guy or girl is the one that's highly skilled but unwilling to do the work. So you're saying, okay, Brian, why does all of this matter for running a business like a business? When you start understanding will versus skill, when you start understanding effort metrics, it creates more predictability. And I believe that's probably the single greatest thing we can do to create a business, right? Everybody's familiar with that real estate roller coaster. What is the real estate roller coaster? Lead generate, lead generate, lead generate, service, 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 service. Lead generate, lead generate, lead generate, service, 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 service. That's unpredictable business. That's unpredictable business. And if we had a better understanding as to our effort metrics and what the ROI is of those metrics, we'd be in a better spot. Second thing, running a business like a business. Are you keeping score in your business? Okay. I won't beat this one up too much, but I usually have, I keep score. Yeah, I know how we're doing. I'll tell you my experience. The number one scoreboard that realtors use in their practice, it's called your bank account balance. Either your balance goes up or it goes down, your checking account on a monthly basis, and many, many, many agents judge whether their business is doing well or doing poorly by which direction that balance is going. Now, this is usually like in a live setting when it gets really awkward. I try not to make eye contact with anybody because you know who you are. You're not maintaining a P&L. You're not really maintaining score. You just see your balance going up or down. Business people don't act that way. Business people keep a compelling scoreboard, including a P&L, and create a culture around this, create a cadence of accountability. You see this scoreboard right here, basketball scoreboard. If you read the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution, it has a great story about a high school in New Orleans just after Hurricane Katrina. And the school came back and it was time for Friday night football, and they go to play this game. And it tells a whole story about how when they go to play this game, there was a weird, funky energy and the teams were a little confused and everybody was super rusty. And the fans, they weren't cheering at the right times, or the energy was just really weird in that stadium. And what they found out was that it was really wonky because that scoreboard that had been destroyed by Katrina had yet to be replaced. So the fans didn't know the score, didn't know the time left, didn't know the quarter, didn't know the timeout the status. The players didn't know what down it was. The fans obviously didn't know what down it was, right? So what they were missing was a compelling scoreboard. If you went to a basketball game right now, if you went to, a Sonics game right now, if you went to a Trailblazers game right now, and you were sitting there and you were watching that game in the stands and that scoreboard went off, what do you think would happen in that stadium? Well, first the ref would stop the game. They'd go spend at least 20 to 30 minutes trying to fix the scoreboard. They'd discover that they can't fix it. They'd go to start to play that game again. And they'd be the whole stadium would be in a totally different mindset. Half the fans would leave. Why? They don't know the score. They don't know the period. They don't know the time. The players, they don't know the score. They don't know if they're up or down. They don't know how many fouls they have. They don't know when they're going to foul out. Think about that. Now, what's the point I'm trying to make here? It's like, Brian, okay, you're killing me with this. The point I'm trying to make is that the vast majority of real estate teams and realtors out there, they're running that exact sort of scenario in their own office right now. Think about it. Do you have a compelling scoreboard that allows everybody in your world to know at any given moment whether your team or you as an individual are thriving or failing? I don't know. When I dug into this and looked at it, what I found is that you think maybe people know, and then I go ask those people, and they're like, nah, not really. I mean, I think we're doing well. And I think subjectivity versus objectivity, subjectivity is a killer in most businesses. Like subjective analysis, feelings. Not that you shouldn't have them, but making decisions based on feelings versus data is what, frankly, those running a practice do, not those running business. The kicker here, and I think the key, if I'm to ask, this focusing question of, hey, are you winning or losing the day? Right? Like if I asked everybody on this call to tell me today at 6 o'clock, did you win or lose today? What would your answer be? And even better, how would you define whether you won or lost? And I think that the vast majority of us go through our business worlds unclear as to what winning or losing looks like and unclear as to where we stand. What I've always said with my agents on my team is, listen, I don't need you to win every day. I just need you to get me to the playoffs. Like, just get me to the playoffs. If you could get me to the playoffs, we get a chance at the Super Bowl. So what do I mean? If there's 20 business days in a month, I don't need you to go 20-0. I don't know. If you can go 12-8, 13-7, we probably make the playoffs. And if we can make the playoffs, we got a shot at the title. And what is the title? It's whatever their income goal may be, or whatever their personal goals may be, whatever that may be. But are you winning or losing the day right now? Where are you at? Where do you sit? Some things to think around. We've always taught this 4 conversation concept. I know, again, a lot of words here. I think there's a couple more conversations to be had. I would be looking at, when I look at my scoreboard, I'm thinking about how much time are we lead generating? And by the way, your lead generation mechanism does not matter here. How much time are you lead generating? How many contacts are you making? How many people are you adding in the database? How many appointments are you setting? Which, by the way, this is probably the most important metric in a shifting market. If you believe your market is changing, I think appointments is probably the single greatest or most important metric to be watching for a variety of reasons. Of those appointments, how many listings, both buyer and seller, are taken, and are you taking? And then lastly, how many closings? These 6 metrics, I think, are very, very key effort leading to product goal measurements. And I think your scoreboard needs to have this sort of thing. If you're running a team, you see this, I wrote, how would you coach to this? Recognize when you start tracking these sorts of things, or you start tracking it at an even greater level. This is probably the single greatest thing you could do as a coach, to have this data, because now you know exactly what you're coaching to, right? If I know that Katie has X number of contacts and Y number of adds to the database, and the quantity of contacts she is making is substantially larger than the number of people she's actually adding into the database, what do I know? What I learned is she's probably saying the wrong thing on the phone. Or if Katie has set a ton of appointments, but she's taking no listings, no buyer or seller listings, what do I know? Well, I know one of 2 things is occurring. She's either saying the wrong things, which it would include not asking for the listing, or she's meeting with the wrong people, right? So my point is, if I'm a real estate team owner and I have this data, this now becomes my playbook, my structure for how I'm going to coach. And when I coach, what am I doing? I'm delivering value. And when I deliver value, that's opportunity. And what does opportunity do? Keep our most important people. So you see the cycle here? This is how business people operate. This is not how practice owners operate. Now, your database. Business owners treat their database like a data bank. Okay? I'm not going to beat you up on your database, but we can all do better here. Okay? Questions to be asking yourself. Do you have a place you're managing all your leads? Or do you use multiple tools? Tools like scraps of paper all over your desk. Do you have a single place where you have all your leads? You need it. This is a big opportunity. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Do you know the next steps for everybody in your database? I don't mean the 15 or 20 people you're working with or talking to on a weekly basis. I mean the guy or girl that's not looking to do something for a year. Do you know what the next steps are for that person? You know, in the market center world, I know a lot of you are on ALC and things like that. In the market center world, we structure sometimes our cap model or our cap calendar by stating like cappers, you know, they create stability and predictability in the market center. They pay the bills. And then it's the half cappers or three-quarter cappers or quarter cappers where the opportunity or profit is made. And then ultimately profit shared. I share that with you because I look at our CRM, I look at our leads the same way. The hot leads that we're working with right now create the stability and predictability, and they keep the lights on. It's all of the other people in our CRM that I've yet to work with that create the true profit. You follow me? So do you know the next steps for everyone in your CRM? Can you tell me your active sales pipeline? Those are the people you're working with right now. Can you define for me? And can you rate and categorize the leads you have in terms of strength? You can see I'm saying basically, how well do you know your database? How well do you know it? Business people have a really strong relationship with their database. Now, mind you, again, if you want to build a big business, these are the things you must do. You can have a weak relationship with your database. I don't have a problem with that. Unless you don't like the 24 deals that you're going to do or the 12 deals you're going to do. Right? Like if there's a misalignment between the quantity of deals you're doing and what you want to be doing, that's where this dialogue exists. That's where we're having this conversation. But if you're good here, I'm good with it too. So you don't have to know your database to the level I'm talking about, but I am only talking about those looking to build a big business. Lastly, what are you looking, maybe most importantly, what are you doing for those leads not looking to buy or sell right now? What are you doing? Again, that's where I think the money's made. So we can beat up database, but I think you get it. Every single one of us, myself included, can be doing a better job as it pertains to our database. There's no question. There are holes galore, and the opportunity to fill those holes is actually, and I mentioned a big opportunity, the opportunity to fill those holes is massive. In that I don't care about filling the data, I care about the outreach. Like if I have to call Katie and I'm like, hey, Katie, it's Brian. Hey, I'm going through the database right now. You know what? I'm missing some information about you. Obviously, I've got your phone number, I have your email. I don't have your property address, and I like to mail things to my most favorite people on a regular basis. Do you mind if I get your property address? Oh, by the way, what's your real estate game plan for 2022? So when we're trying to like gather this information and get our database back in order, recognize the information's secondary. The forced lead generation that's created is where the opportunity lies. I know that it may not resonate with some of you guys, but that's probably like that's the biggest takeaway here. And it's one of the quickest ways to get your people into business. Fill the gaps, fill the void, the holes in your CRM, but always end every one of those conversations with, hey, tell me, what's your game plan for 2022? What's your real estate plans? Oh, I don't have any. You don't have any? I mean, you guys know the scripts. I'm not going to run you through all this stuff. But point is that's a big opportunity. Now, number 4, about as it pertains to building your business like a business. I love this one. I'm kind of a psycho when it comes to this particular action item. I believe that business owners, we all have to become what I would coin or what I would call an executive athlete. Now, we don't have time to run through the exercise, but usually at this time, you know, when I'm talking around this concept, you know, I'd ask for somebody in the room to tell me, if they played a sport during their life, who played a high school sport. And usually a bunch of hands go up, and I say, okay, who did anybody go on to play a college sport? And usually there's a handful of hands. And like I was talking about this with my own market center in Phoenix last week, and I had one gentleman in the front that played college football. And I said, cool. His name's Winston. I said, Winston, tell me about your college football experience. He's like, what do you want to know about it? Tell me about your training. Oh, we trained every day. Weights, running, jumping, plyometrics, I'm like, cool. What else did you do? He's like, oh, I watched hours of film, hours. And I go, tell me about that film. Was it just like you watching all the games? He's like, no, we watched plays. He's like, sometimes, Brian, I would spend hours watching the first 3 steps I was taking. My coach would make me watch my first 3 steps as a running back. And I'd watch it over and over again. I go, no way. He's like, yeah. And I go, tell me about your recovery. He's like, oh, recovery, ice baths, the Normatec compression boots, massage. I'm like, oh, no way. And I'm going through all this with him. I mean, tell me about your nutrition. He's like, nutrition? I had a nutritionist. The team assigned one to us. We all had to eat a specific way for our position and body type and weight and strength. I'm like, no kidding. He's like, yeah, we had blood drawn every couple of weeks to make sure we were eating in accordance. Now he played real high level football. And I'm like, and I'm going through this whole exercise with him. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me get this straight, Winston. You spent you spent hours upon hours, thousands of hours to prepare yourself to play an amateur sport at the age of 21. And he's like, yeah. I said, okay, well, you're 40 now. Tell me about how you prepare yourself to be a professional realtor. Tell me about what your practice looks like. Tell me about your film sessions look like. Tell me what your diet looks like, your nutrition, your recovery, your performance management. Tell me about these things. And he's like, I go to Bold every now and again. I'm like, yeah, cool. What else? Well, I go to some masterminds. Okay, cool. What else you doing? Well, every once in a while I jot down like my to-do list. I'm like, cool. I'm like, you see the disconnect? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you were spending like every ounce of energy when you weren't on the field, you spent trying to improve your performance on the field. And you were 21 playing an amateur sport that you were never going to play again once you graduated from college. No disrespect, you weren't going to the NFL. He's like, yeah. And I go, but we're in this professional world. We're executives in this professional world. We're trying to build a massive business, yet we walk around just haphazardly, half-assing, what it is that creates a legacy for us and our family. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. If I asked you, tell me about the last time you watched film of your listing presentation, what would your answer be? 99% of people would say, I've never watched film of my listing presentation or your buyer consultation. Or I say, tell me about your nightly routine to prepare for the next day of going out and crushing it in the business world. Tell me about your recovery. Tell me about how you get your mind right. Isn't it kind of crazy? Like the thing that you do that could create millions of dollars of income on an annual basis, you just kind of roll into and roll out of. But if you played even at high school, if you played high school, you practiced, you trained. I mean, it's crazy to think about. So you're like, all right, Brian, I get it. My challenge to everybody here is, what would it look like? What would it look like for you to take all that I just described a college football player to do and apply it to your world? And by the way, if you're unwilling to do it, that's cool by me. Again, that just means that you're going to run that practice. You're not running that business. You may luck into a business, but it's not sustainable. The biggest business owners, builders I know, if you go to you go to Gary Keller, that guy's an executive athlete. He really is. Between how he gets his mind right, what his prep looks like, what his calendar looks like, what his recovery needs to look like, who's coaching him, who's mentoring him, what his circle looks like. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That is a serious executive. If you don't want to be serious, that's your choice, but building a business requires a degree of focus and seriousness. Okay. which leads to building a business is a function of managing your time. You guys all know this, but are you doing it? Managing your time, you know this, but are you doing it? Probably the single greatest bit of advice I had around managing my time, and some of you may have seen this before, but in the book, Tools of Titans, which is Tim Ferriss's book where he interviews, I don't know, 400 or so people. You may remember he interviews this guy named Derek Sivers. Derek Sivers was owned this company called CD Baby that he ended up selling and making a bunch of money on. But he asked Derek about time management. And again, you may have heard this, but Derek's the guy that said, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no for me. Actually, I think he says F yeah, but we'll go with hell yeah for today. If it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. Meaning, like, if I'm about to put something on my calendar and I don't say, hell yeah, I can't wait to do that, it's a no. And I started looking at my world and my calendar. Like, if you pulled up your calendars right now, if you honor or live by a calendar, which if you're not doing that, you need to start, assuming you are, and you're looking at every appointment on your calendar for the rest of this week and next week, ask yourself on each block, am I saying hell yeah? If so, it probably deserves to stay there. And if you're saying the opposite of that, I might be looking for ways to remove it, unapologetically remove it. Like, again, I'm going back to, I'm an executive athlete. I'm focused on my database. I'm keeping score, right? Like, these are the things, like, I am not going to, like, I'm trying to build the biggest world I can, and they all got to be hell yeah. So if you all look at your calendars, you're saying hell yeah right now. Now, I get it. There's going to be some things that you're not going to say hell yeah to that you got to go attend. You're obligated to. I get it. I'm okay with that. But would you eliminate maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things possibly? Yes. And if you know your dollar per hour, would you save $1,000 as a result of that? Yes. And what would you do with that time? What would you plug in? Now, one thing I'm a huge fan of, and it's in addition to managing your time, I believe business owners block thinking time. Business owners block thinking time. And there are a few better than Warren Buffett that do this. As a matter of fact, many of you may know, Warren pretty much sits around and reads books all day and thinks. Some thinking time questions for you. I would challenge you to do that. Do this maybe over the weekend or today, or I don't care, block time and ask yourself some questions. For example, what's the most difficult or challenging decision I've recently had to make? Why was it challenging? Is there anything I could have done in the past to make this decision simpler? Or what is the best thing that's happened to me in my business over the past 12 months? How do I get more experiences like that? Imagine if you asked that question. What's the best thing that happened in my business over the past 12 months? How do I get more experiences like that? And you sat in front of a whiteboard for a half hour. What do you think you might find? My favorite, the very last question there. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know today, what would I have done differently in my business? That's a fun question. That's a fun question. Now, usually the first answers you come up with in the first 3 minutes are terrible by the time you get to 20 minutes of this session. I know it sounds crazy, but if you're able to block a half hour to 60 minutes a week just to ask yourself some bigger questions and have thinking time, it will change your game. It will change the world. Number 6, and there's one more after this, and we'll wrap up. In terms of running your business like a business, cliche, corny, we've all heard it. I'm telling you, if you don't believe it, believe me, your circle matters. Your circle matters. And business owners, those run big businesses, they know this, they get it, right? They associate with the right people. If they're in the wrong group, they aspire to get in a different group. So who's your 5? You are the average of the 5 people you're spending the most time with. Fact, your income level is probably the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Some of you are probably the pinnacle, the highest performer in your group of 5. And as much as it pains you to hear this, you need to find a new 5. The tricky thing that nobody ever talks about is that when you're trying to find your next group of 5, recognize that group of 5 is trying to run from you. No one ever says that. It's like, oh, I want to go get another 5, a bigger 5. Yeah, they're trying to run from you because you'd be trying to move up. They're trying to move away, right? Just like you maybe be doing it. It's not disrespectful. It's just fact. So you may find yourself getting on a plane if you're not already doing it. You may find yourself in Bellingham, Washington, right? Like you may and that's me personally, right? Like, believe me, I don't want to go from Scottsdale to Bellingham. It's great. I love Bellingham. I love it. But it's 3 hour, 2.5 hour. I don't even know how to fly there. It's whatever. But I want to hang with Ben because I consider Ben in my 5, and I think he'd consider me in his 5. Last thing, and we'll wrap up. If my stop moving. There it goes. There we go. Last thing, actually act like a CEO. What does that mean? Your job is culture of that team. Your job is people of that organization. And your job is to look at the numbers. If you cast the right vision, create the right culture, bring the right people in, and inspire based on those numbers, you'll be building a business. Usually, if there's a disconnect with all those things I'm saying, what I find is it's oftentimes in this, you're not acting, you're talking, you're saying the thing. Actions. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I have like all these warnings going off on my computer right now. Your actions don't necessarily always align with the words. So that's about it. I know I ran through a lot and it's tough in a virtual environment, but hopefully you got at least one thing out of here. And if you didn't, you're going to email me or call me and we're going to make sure you did. Cool?
So cool, Brian. Thank you so much. And for those of you on the call, like we said, we will send out the slides. So if you didn't capture all that in the extra notes, no worries. Brian, thank you so much. I didn't see any questions dropped in the chat box. Does anybody have, we have a few minutes left, Brian, if you have any. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask while we have him live on the line?
No.
They're all shy. Look at them being shy. I will just tell you like a great reminder, Ryan, is this thinking time. Katie and I do this, I guess my thinking time is when I'm driving in the car. And she unfortunately gets to be like my mind dump of like the activities. But I think that the higher you are in your leadership and your growth of your team, that so often gets like pushed aside in the doing. And thank you for the reminder of that. We really need to get to that thinking time, and we have to do it for enough time that we get to what I call like the flow state, right?
Well, so, I will, I love that. And I'll tell you something here real quick, what changed the game for me. It's really simple, but it just made me look at things a little differently. I found myself in a town up your way of LaConner, Washington. Mm-hmm. And I met I guess he's technically a psychologist, but he doesn't really go by that. More of like this guru, and he's not spiritual either. It's kind of like he's just a mindset guy. And he asked me, he said, Brian, when do you get your best ideas? And I go, what do you mean? He's like, literally, when do the best ideas come to you? And I said, when I'm running. He's like, yeah, when else? I'm like, when I'm driving? He's like, yeah, when else? I'm like, when I'm in the shower? He's like, okay, anywhere else? I'm like, when I'm on vacation? He's like, yeah. He's like, what do all these things have in common? And I said, my mind is kind of at its calmest, I guess. He's like, exactly. He says, so let me get this straight. You get your best ideas, and those best ideas likely make you the most money or create the greatest result. You get your best ideas when your mind is at its calmest. Why do you not want more of those moments? I don't get it. Like, why are you go, move this, do that, work 12 hours? He's like, I mean, yeah, that's great. You're executing, sure. But you just explained to me your best ideas that create the most opportunity and money happen when your mind is at its calmest. And I'm like, oh shit, you got me there. And that became, that really kind of started me on this. You know what? I got to block time. And by the way, when I say thinking time, it's not as organic as what he desires it to be. But I've got to get myself like kind of calm. I'm not saying meditative, but I've got to just chill out for a minute, write something up on a board and let it sit there and see what happens. And I'll tell you, man, I mean, again, I'm going to guess there hasn't been anybody like all of you when you're driving, when you're in the shower. I mean, you've got your own things, whatever it may be, but it's always when like you're on autopilot. So how do you get yourself to that state to solve some of your biggest challenges, personal or business? That was a game changer for me.
I love that. And so what I'm going to hear you say is one, give yourself permission to have that time, right? The other piece that I always say is like, give myself permission not to make a decision until I have had that time, right? I will just tell people, like I tell Katie all the time, hey, I'm not going to get to flow state till Friday. Like you're not going to get a response to me, like from me until Friday, because that's when I have my flow state time. And I guess what I would say with your takeaway is go through that list again, schedule some flow state time for yourself and figure out what the best thing is to navigate all of the awesome topics and tips he gave you today.
I love that.
That's it, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Brian, you're a rock star.
Thank you, guys.
Love all of you, Dana, Cindy, Matthew, all of you stayed to the end. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.